Hey everyone, today in Mr. Kenny's Ancient History class, we're going to be talking about the Roman army. This is going to be a fun little bonus one that I'm excited that we get to do. One thing to remember, of course, is this is going to change a lot over time. So there'll be numbers that aren't necessarily the same throughout the entire Roman Republic and Roman Empire period. All right, so let's begin. Organization. So, for Rome's history, they pretty much used what was called the legion. That was going to be how they organized their men. Now, the numbers of these legions would vary throughout times. Between 7,000 men would be the typical numbers, but of course, as battles waged on, they would, be diminished. So the commander of a legion was called a legate. Now, the legions were then divided into what was called a cohort, and there were 10 of the cohorts. And then these cohorts had 6 centuries. Now, if we know that word century, let's guess how many men that would be. That would be 100 men typically when they started. So you have 600 men in a cohort, and then you have 10 of those. So this area would have 6,000 men in this particular legion. Each century was commanded by a centurion, and the centurions are going to be incredibly important for the Roman army. You see, they are going to be the battle hardened veterans of the legions. They're going to make sure to train the soldiers. They are going to make sure people obey orders. They are going to be leading in battle. Some were known for their cruelty, but almost all were known for their incredible loyalty and their skills on the battlefield. You typically would see a centurion also, you could tell by the headdress on their helmet, the plume. All right, now standard bearers. Now, this is going to seem strange to us, but this was an incredibly important role. You see, each century had its own emblem, its standard, and someone would carry this into battle, and it would be an experienced, trusted, and brave soldier. And this is going to be important because remember, they don't have the technology like we do. Soldiers on the battlefield needed to know where their unit was, where they are moving, and battles are chaotic and crazy. So they had the standard bearers there to make sure soldiers knew where they needed to be or where they needed to go. Particularly when we have the Roman civil wars, it's also going to help know where your own side is because it's legionary versus legionary. And it would be considered a huge disgrace if your standard was lost or captured. There was a big deal where right when the Roman Empire was founded, we had the eagles taken from a legion that had been defeated by the German barbarians. And, Varus lost the eagles, and Augustus was said to say, I want my eagles back. I want the eagles back. And so, for example, if the standard bearer was killed, someone would literally put down their weapon or sheathe their gladius to hold the standard for them. It was that important. So, how to become a legionary? Because they want you. So, first off, you had to be a Roman citizen. You also had to be fit and tall. Now, tall for the Romans was actually my height, which is kind of crazy because you know that I'm not that big of a guy. But back then, people were smaller. Their diets were less nutritious, so people didn't grow as tall. And one of the things is so in our country today, often people they join the army, they enlist, they're in there for 2, 4, 6, 8 years. This was a career. You would stay in the army for about 25 years, unless you were, terribly wounded or killed. Now, typically you were around 18, 20 years old when you would join, and you would train hard, hard, hard. You would march at least 15 miles a month. Roman mile was much longer than our miles today as well. And one of the things they would do to help you with these marches to become even more fit is you'd carry tons and tons and tons of gear. So they're carrying all of these things with them to make it where they're used to it. It's easy for them to travel. You would drill all the time. You would march. You would train. You would learn the battle maneuvers. One of the things that they would also do to help make it easier is they would give you short swords and shields that were twice as heavy as the real thing, so that once you finally get to the real gladius, the real shield, you are going to be, it's going to be light as a feather to you, basically. Notice how the shield on there is curved. That helps deflect projectiles. Notice also how the shield really, really covers the Roman soldier up. Now, through different periods of Roman history, they're going to have these rectangular shields. They're also going to have sometimes with circular shields as well. It just depends on the era. You notice how they have the metal butt plate in the center there. That's going to help for when you literally bash someone with your shield, help reinforce it, make it stronger. They're going to have a grip, much like the Athenian shields did, where their arm will be slotted through to give them extra leverage and strength. This Roman soldier is pretty much covered head to toe. He should be wearing shin guards, which kind of surprises me that he doesn't in this picture, because that's going to be part of the Roman equipment as well to protect them. Here we see some more examples of the Roman equipment. We see their sandals. They're cleated so that they're going to be able to have traction. We see the Roman gladius, the short sword here. We see the spear, which we talked about in our Roman Republic notes, the pilum, which is going to be great. Actually, not sure if it's the pilum or pilum. I apologize. But the whole idea was they would throw that, and we have a wide point, and then it gets very narrow, and the idea is that it would actually bend when it went into the enemy shield so that the enemy wouldn't be able to use their shield. You'd see a knife, you'd see in the back of the neck how it's protected very well. The Romans, they had strong armor and it protected them, and there's a reason why the Romans were so dangerous on the battlefield. One of the things with the Roman legions that isn't to be forgotten is that they were warriors, but they were also the engineers, of their time. They're the builders. Those Roman roads were built by the legions. Many of the Roman buildings built by the legions. So it wasn't just war that you would train. Some of them would receive good educations and learn how to do quite a lot in building the Roman Empire. So, who else was in the army? And so we have a group called the auxiliaries. Now, the auxiliaries, they are going to be non-citizen soldiers, and they're going to fight for Rome. Typically, they're going to be put in positions like the cavalry. They could be archers as well. Horses were expensive, and horses weren't something that the Romans were as proficient in as other things. So when they conquered places that had excellent equestrians, that's fancy for horseback riders, they would enlist them into the army so that they could fight for them. Like I said, often archers would be, but many auxiliaries, they literally fought with a sword or a short spear, and would sometimes be treated kind of as cannon fodder, meaning they would be sent in first or right after the skirmishers, which would be people to kind of initiate the attack, and then they would take the brunt of the casualties, and the legion would come in and attack. Archers, one thing to notice is all those archers, they have swords. When they were done shooting their arrows, they were expected to go out and do their share of the dirty work as well. So don't think that was just a safe location for them. One of the things that's a shame about the auxiliaries is they were definitely second class. Like I said, sometimes used as cannon fodder, where they're going to have the most casualties, meaning injuries and deaths. They are not going to receive as much training. They're not going to have as much pay. But after serving with the Roman legion, they would become a Roman citizen, and their children too, which is worth quite a lot. Because you might be thinking, why would these people that Rome conquered fight for Rome? Well, they wanted to become part of Rome. There's a lot of rights received in citizenship, which we discussed in our Growth and Decline of the Roman Empire notes earlier on. If I remembered, it'll pop up over on the screen that way, I think. Oh boy, YouTube's fun. So, Why join the army? Well, you get cash, you get land, good pay. And one of the great things is you only have to pay for your food and weapons. I mean, how good is that? You get to sleep under the stars. You get to travel the empire. That's one of the things. For almost all of history, most people were born, lived, and died within 5 miles of where they're born. Well, with this, you get to travel the empire and see the world like no one else did. As I mentioned earlier, they were the engineers, the designers, the builders of the Roman Empire. Those roads, those baths, the bridges, the forts, medicine. They learned that too. Plus, get to work out all the time. I mean, you get to be buff. Yeah. All right. You get to protect Rome, its people, your loved ones. When you are in war, you might plunder and loot the enemy and get riches that way. And of course, impress the ladies. Anyways, folks, this was our notes on the Roman army. A nice little bonus, a little detour from the narrative we've been going through. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you have a wonderful day. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, pass it along so more people can get some great ancient history knowledge. Have a great one, everybody. Bye.